Hi, welcome to Week in Review, where we look at some of the news making headlines. I'm joined this week by our sports editor, Ryan Sharp, business editor, Don Mecoy, and in Washington, D.C., Ben Felder, who's attending the Education Writers Association National Conference. Let's start with Ben. Ben, why don't you give us a rundown on what the main topics have been among education writers this week?
Yeah, so this is a big conference for the EWA, so hundreds of education writers from across the country. I do a lot of education coverage on the Watchdog desk. Um, and so, really, the theme of this conference is education in the era of Trump. So, new President Trump and his administration, Betsy DeVos, his pick for education secretary. It was kind of an unconventional pick, at least compared to past education secretaries. A big push for school choice, whether it's through vouchers or charter expansion. And really, one of the interesting themes today, or this week, at the conference has been, is that the president has this school choice agenda that doesn't always gel well in a lot of the rural and heartland communities that supported him so heavily during the election. Being that school vouchers and school choice, may be something that's viable in an urban center, but when you're in a small town, like many communities across Oklahoma, you really don't have a choice. It's your public school, and so a lot of the talk this week is just coverage of Trump's education agenda, which also includes his recently released proposed budget, which makes some pretty major cuts to the Department of Education. It's important to note that the president's budget is usually just a suggestion and gets changed quite a bit before final adoption. But yeah, those are some of the major themes education writers from across the country are gathering this week.
And one of the big issues this year, or one of the controversies that's kind of surrounded the conference this year, is the lack of attendance by the education secretary, which has traditionally always sort of been a part of this meeting. Betsy DeVos chose not to attend. What's any talk about that at the conference this week?
Yeah, it kind of just went along with the general theme right now in the media of just kind of the hostility from the current administration towards the press. I mean, I think it's important to remember that that hostility has always existed. In fact, I got to town a day early and had a chance to go to the museum, which is a great museum on journalism here, and it's a good sobering reminder that the press and government of all levels have always had friction, but access has been a big issue with this administration, and Betsy DeVos has not gotten a lot of favorable, attention from traditional education outlets. So she declined the invite to come speak to the EWA conference. I believe that's the first time since the Carter administration that the current education secretary didn't come. And a lot of talk about, what's her schedule look like. There wasn't anything on her schedule on Wednesday when she was supposed to address the crowd. But yeah, it just seemed to kind of go along with this general theme right now that reporters, especially in D.C., are talking a lot about, and that's just access to this administration or lack of access.
And if you don't follow Ben Felder on Twitter, you should, because you'll be getting updates about a lot of the stuff that's happening in D.C. this week. Ben, I'm sure we'll have more stories from you when you get back. Appreciate your visiting with us today. Let's turn to Don Mecoy. Don, we've got stuff happening. What we thought was going to be a major project down by the river and down off near Bricktown apparently is now off the drawing board.
Yeah, we're talking about the old Producers Co-op property. This is 40 acres of prime real estate near downtown, south of Bricktown, along with the river, along that area. And that was even a spot that the city had considered putting our convention center on, but the Producers Co-op wanted too much for that land. Well, along comes Bob Funk Jr., who's been a fairly successful promoter of sports-related events in Oklahoma City, and he comes up with a deal that looks really good, and he's going to redevelop it. There's going to be retail, there's going to be housing, and maybe someday a major soccer park there.
A stadium,
yeah,
for
a
stadium
team. for an MLS franchise, which we don't have, but a lot of people would like to get. The Energy have had some success here, but it was a very complex deal, and as they worked through it, as he worked through it, the numbers just didn't add up apparently. So they kind of this week announced that they were pulling the plug on the whole deal. Which puts that property back on the block because Producers Co-op no longer has operations there. They've moved all their operations down to the Altus area. So it's this industrial property near downtown, 40 acres.
And if people who may not be familiar with it, it's the big sort of fabricated steel plant that sits just off of Interstate 40, right?
Yeah, if you go to the Harkins Theater in that area of Bricktown and you look south, you see these giant sheet metal buildings. and it has a huge producers co-op sign on it. That's what we're talking about. At the time that it went in there, that was just an industrial area, and that was a great area for that kind of activity to take place, and now it's totally changed. Everything around it has been developed.
So is it essentially dead? Everything? I mean, is there any other plan or proposal or anything in the works,
Well,
or is it pretty much on hold for now?
I think a lot of people have great ideas about things they could do with it. I don't know that we haven't had anybody that has stepped forward and said, here's what I want to do and here's what I'm willing to pony up. So I think we're kind of back to where we were before the Funk deal, which is, yeah, someone's going to want it. A lot of people are going to want it, but can they make the numbers work as far as what Producers Co-op wants for the property and what it's going to cost to redevelop it?
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Somebody who is making it work, I guess, is Kingfisher. The oil boom's been good to that city.
Yeah, Kingfisher and Kingfisher County is the most active drilling area in Oklahoma right now. I think right now there are 20 active drilling rigs in Kingfisher County, which is kind of the heart of the stack play, which is probably the third most active play in the United States. And so Adam Wilmoth went there recently and spent some time with people in Kingfisher, and it's fascinating because he talked to a lady whose RV park that she's run for years is full up. She said, I could take 200 more. But she's also waiting for some drilling checks to come in. She's got 7 wells on her property. And there is a daily rush hour now in Kingfisher, a city of 5,000 people. And Highway 81 runs through there. You have all these trucks that are constantly coming through, and they line up for miles at times going through Kingfisher. It's just amazing what's going on there. And Adam wrote a story that we're going to have in Sunday's paper with pictures and a lot of color, and it's just an amazing look at how oil can change a place.
Well, I hope they always remember that it's a cyclical business.
They do.
And that they are socking some money away for a rainy day.
Well, they are. He talked to the mayor and the city manager, and they talked about some of those aspects of, we know someday this will end.
Great. All right, listen, so we got a lot of excitement happening out at the softball stadiums. What's shaking? World Series time, right?
Yeah, Women's College World Series started last night, actually. It's a big-time event for the area and for Oklahoma City especially, because you get some pretty passionate fan bases for these softball teams that come in. And you've got some big ones. LSU, UCLA, Oregon, Washington all have these massive fan bases that travel with their softball teams.
There's a pretty good one from Norman, I hear.
Yeah, and then you got the locals here as well, which is great. It was fantastic to see ESPN go live from Oklahoma City at 11 a.m. on a Thursday, and the stadium's packed. There wasn't an empty seat in the place. Had a little bit of controversy yesterday, so that was good. Kept things interesting, and then OU won late last night.
And I guess it's all sold out, so if you want to go, I guess you're going to have to go to a ticket broker.
You can get tickets. There's some available. They still do general admission tickets and things like that. And there's always tickets available from people that are at the event or from secondary marketplaces too.
Well, it's a great time. I spent a day out there a couple years ago, and it was absolutely a blast. So if you haven't been there, you should try it. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. Before we go, last thing, the park. They're naming our giant new park the Central Park of Oklahoma City.
Yeah, the MAPS 3 Park.
The MAPS 3 Park, and I think we all agree that we don't like the names.
Well, I don't know that everybody agrees with that.
Us three.
There's probably us three. Well, personally, I liked Skydance Park, but they decided they went with Skydance Green, which just doesn't work. It doesn't sound right to me. So, but yeah, you can go to News OK, and there's 6 choices. They opened it up. And I think they got thousands of nominations, and then a committee winnowed it down to these 6 choices, and it's going to be one of these 6. So go there, find a one you like, and I do sort of like the what's the one that Union Station Commons. I kind of like the sound of that, and there is a Union Station there. The former Union Station is in the park, and will be part of the park.
Right.
You don't like that one?
I'm still confused by the greens part of it. I like some of the names. Skydance, I like that. I like the Union Station.
And the Flycatcher. Those are the 2 that at least seem to have some resonance. I don't know what the second half of the names of those are, but it should just be like Skydance Park or...
Well, you know what, and this happened with the Brooktown Ballpark, that they wanted to call it one thing, and everybody just decided to call it the Bricktown Ballpark. So
See, you know what they should have called that was Bricktown Greens.
it was, and it was actually worse than that, what they actually did want to call it. But we could vote for Skydance Greens, and then we'll just call it Skydance Park.
Okay, that sounds like a strategy. Okay, see, we're solving problems. We're not just presenting news, we're solving problems. So anyway, that's what you get here every week, every day, 365 days a year. Pick up a paper, check us out online. We'll see you next week.